This is part 3 of the story. So, anyways, I go stay at a friend of mine's house for a couple days, basically the weekend. And while I'm over there, we hang out some and all that. But then late that evening, we go back, and then we're just all sitting in the living room, you know, shooting the breeze, watching TV, stuff like that. And it's me, my 2 brothers, their 2 sisters, and we're just all shooting the breeze. Their mom's in the bedroom, and usually in the evening she'd be in her bedroom laying on the bed reading books, and that's what she did a lot. She read you know, romance books, stuff like that. But anyways, and then her boyfriend was in the kitchen, and he had his brother with him, and then my friend's uncle was in there with him. And they was in there, drinking. And then they had got up and they went to the liquor store. So they all left, and then they came back. When they came back, they had more booze and stuff like that. And they'd sit around the table drinking. Sometimes we'd peek in there just being nosy, and seeing what they was doing and stuff like that. But anyway, they were drinking. I remember they had a lot of pills on the table and stuff like that. And so obviously they were taking pills and drinking at the same time, whatever. But anyways, it was 3 of them. Then, as the night progressed, it started getting real loud in the kitchen. So we went to check out what was happening. So basically they was getting ready to fight. So the guy got up, and the other guy swung on him a couple times and knocked him to the floor. And the bathroom was off to the side of the kitchen. So the dude falls into the floor of the bathroom. So then, then we look at his brother that was there, and he gets up out of the table, and he's ready to fight too. And then their uncle swings on him a couple times, knocks him to the floor. Well, then he turns to look at the first guy he knocked down, and we're looking too. And then the guy pulls a gun, so we all kind of jump back, and then he fires at one time. The guy hits the. Well, I think he got shot out 2 times. I think he fired twice, and then the guy spent. But I don't know. He might have shot once, he spent, then he shot him again. But regardless of how that happened, because like I said, we jumped back. But he got shot 2 times. He hit the fridge, and he slid down the fridge. And then, so that guy got up, and he goes to the table, puts his gun on the table. So the girls run to get their mom, and then she comes out, wondering what's going on. And then, the girls tell her what happened. So she's like, hey, you want me to go call an ambulance? And then he was like, no, nobody's leaving. And so I think he had us wait there 30, 40 minutes. And she kept talking to him, trying to talk him into, getting some help and stuff like that. Finally, he said, yeah, y'all can go call an ambulance. So then everybody just jetted out the house, And we went next door, and that was the landlord's house. His name was Walter Dudley. And we went over there, and then she called, and then what we did is just sit on his front porch. And the girls stayed with their mom, and the guys, and my younger brother, he was young at that time, so he stayed with them too. And me and my older brother, which was my street brother. And we sat on the front porch, and here comes the ambulance and the police. No, the police came first, and they went in there and they pulled out their weapons. I think they had like 44s or 45 nickel plated weapons. I think they were 45s. And they pulled him out, went in there, and they brought him out in handcuffs. Then they brought his brother out in handcuffs. And then the ambulance showed up, and they went in there, and I think some detectives showed up too. And they went in there, and they was in there for a minute. And then my godmother and the girls and my youngest brother, they had left in a taxi cab. But I don't know. Actually, to this day, I don't, because I never asked her after the fact. To this day, I don't know where they actually went to. But anyways, maybe my brother would, I ain't even never asked him neither after the fact, but they went somewhere. But anyways, we're on the front porch, and so we asked one of the police officers, we're like, hey, are we going to be able to go back in? Because if we wasn't able to go back in the house, we was going to have to figure out something to do. And then they said, yeah, y'all be able to go in a few minutes. And so then they bring the body out, stuff like that. And then they let us in. And, that was a tragic thing, too, to happen. And that dude had lost his life. But if that guy wouldn't have had a gun, they would have just, actually had to take an ass whooping, because the guy that he shot was a bad dude. You know what I mean? But that was just his end of his badass days. You know what I mean? Because just because you're a bad dude, meaning you can fight real good and all that, don't mean you can't get took out, And that's just one incident right there that, of many that's happened in the city, and that guy had lost his life, And that was a tragedy because, seemed like at the beginning they was all having a good time and they was just going on and, drinking and talking and all that. Then next thing you know, this happened. So, that guy losing his life, that was another sad situation. Because it's a sad thing for anybody to lose their life. No matter what the scenario is, But and then also we went in there and my brother picked his shoes up, the dead man's shoes. He picks his shoes up. I don't know why the shoes wasn't on his feet. Maybe they took them off of him, or maybe they flew off of him when he hit the refrigerator and fell. I really don't know the situation, but his shoes were laying there, And so he picks the shoes up and he's like, I don't think he's going to be needing these no more and stuff like that. So he throws them in the trash, And I don't believe this was his real uncle. I believe they just called him uncle. And because I've known him all my life and I don't think he's no relation to him, basically. But anyways, they just called him that. And but anyways, he threw them away and stuff like that. And me and him sat around and talked about the situation for a little while. And then we had went to bed. And then the next morning we get up, we eat some cereal. And then he's like, hey, you think my mom's at your mom's house? And I said, she might be, because she never told us where they were going. He said, well, you want to, after we eat, you want to head over to your house, see if they're over there? And I was like, yeah, we could do that. And then he said, on the way, I want to stop by Danny's mom's house. Danny is the dude who got shot and killed. He said, on the way, I want to stop by Danny's mom's house and see if mom went over there first, because her house was before my mom's house. And he said, and maybe she needs to know what happened. And I was like, dude, don't tell that lady nothing like that. I said, leave that to the 5-0. I said, let them tell her, you know. And I said, they probably done told her by now. That's what I was thinking, because I didn't know how the situation, you know, how quick they do tell somebody's parents if they got shot. You know what I mean? I really didn't know. So I was like, maybe they done told her. But anyways, I told him, I said, well, when you go over there, man, don't mention nothing about Danny. You know, just ask your mom there and that's it. And then, you know, he didn't say anything. And I was like, so we get there and he knocks on the window. First he knocks on the door, nobody comes to the door. He knocks on the window. Then she comes to the door. And then he says, hey, has my mom been over here? And she's like, no, I ain't seen her in a while. And she said, you seen Danny? And I started tapping him. I said, don't say nothing, man. You know, and he still told her, you know. And he said, man, she needs to know. And I was like, oh, shit. But anyways, he tells her. And at this time, you know, once we went up to her porch, across the street from her house is a field. It's got a real tall fence, maybe 10 or 12-foot fence. And it's got basketball hoops, and some guys were over there playing basketball. And as soon as he tells her, he's like, Danny got killed last night by Jim. He said, by Jim, my mom's boyfriend. Because I don't even know if she ever had a chance to meet him, because, you know, they were dating and going together, but they weren't together that long, you know. And so I don't know if she ever even met him, but that's how he laid it on her, you know. And man, this lady, and I can imagine, you know, some mother of their child, no matter if it's a small kid or a grown person, they're liable to flip out, you know, when you tell them their kid got shot, you know, and killed. So, and that's exactly what she did. She was like yelling, cussing, or actually cussing his mom out, which is my godmother, and saying a bunch of nasty stuff about her, and I mean, just yelling at the top of her lungs. It was just crazy. And she was just going off. And then all them dudes that playing basketball across the street, they started looking at us like we did something to her. And but basically all he did was tell her that her son got killed by his mom's boyfriend. So it really looked bad too. But you know, I guess he just felt like he needed to tell her, you know, and so he told her. But he could have avoided that. But to this day, I think he shouldn't have did it. But anyway, she's yelling real loud and stuff, and it's just something that'll bother you. You know what I mean? Like the yelling she was doing, I felt real sorry for her, and I actually felt it, and I'm sure he felt it too. You know what I mean? And I'm sure he probably thought, "Damn, I shouldn't have said nothing." You know what I mean? But after he said it, it's too late. But she just totally flipped out. So he jumps. We're on the porch. He jumps over the rail to the side of the porch. So do I. He takes off to the backyard, so I follow him. And we jump the fence. We're in the alley. Then we go down the alley, and we stop down the alley by Michigan Avenue. And we light a cigarette. And then I told him, I said, "Man, I told you shouldn't have said anything." He was like, "Man, I thought she ought to know, but I didn't think she was going to do all that." And I was like, "Yeah, you know." But anyways, that was just another sad situation. Somebody, lost her life that me and him, seen. And but it was crazy, you know what I mean? And just, you know, just a lot of trauma and stuff like that, and just crazy things that you encounter. And some people, now in Detroit City, I'm sure there's a lot of people that encountered similar things than I did, but not all people has went through all that stuff. You know what I mean? And some people just only sees that kind of stuff on TV, on movies, or something like that. So it's just a lot of trauma and stuff like that, and it's just crazy. And just things like that is just, some things you just think, I can see, you know, I really just don't see no reason to take somebody's life, not unless they're basically trying to take your life. You know what I mean? But, some of the things that happened was just, you'd say that, or think it was just uncalled for. You know what I mean? But it's just a lot of trauma and stuff that stays with you for the rest of your life. And, and you just got to deal with it on a day to day basis. And, make it through life yourself, you know. And there was this one incident that happened to me. I can't talk about it right now, but I will talk about it in the future on another video. But right now, I can't talk about it, but I'll mention something about it. There was something that happened to me by some high up people, and it was, I want to say I'm trying to think how old I was. I want to say I was maybe 14, in between 13 and 14. And after me seeing, all these people, die and get killed, and hear about these deaths and all this other stuff, all this stuff's with me. And then this happens to me, and it scares the living shit out of me. And I really thought I was going to die that day. And this stayed with me also. and it's just real crazy. But, you know, I would just say this guy, I'll tell you the story later when the time's right, but right now I'll just say this guy is a high up individual, and he pulled a gun on me, and it was only like I would say 3 feet away from me. And it just scared the shit out of me. It was like, I don't know if you ever been in a situation, anybody in my audience, whatever, but it was just a situation where I seen and heard about all the, you know, the deaths that I've seen and the deaths that I've heard about and stuff like that. And just at this particular point, I'm only like 13 or 14 years old at this time. And when this happened, I was just I was just so scared that, you know, I didn't really know what to do. You know what I mean? And I'll do a video on this situation later, but uh, at that point, at that time, I thought that was the end of my life right there, you know. And that's something that stays with me too, you know, and I had to deal with on a day to day basis, stuff like that. But it's just crazy, you know. And once I tell y'all the story and everything, y'all are really gonna flip out. But that's something I'll talk about down the road. But that was just a real scary incident, you know. And I really thought my life was over at that point, you know. And but you know, luckily it wasn't, because I'm here today. But I will say this, all the things that I've been through and all the trauma that I've been through and the way I maneuver through life, stuff like that, it's got me where I'm at today. And that's, you know, another day above ground, you know. But it's just it's just a hellacious story, and I will do a video on that later on. But I got to do it when the time's right. So that's just another crazy incident. Also, I want to talk about another death that took place. And this is a friend of mine in Detroit City, Coslow. I called him Cos, but his mom called him Coslow. And, you know, and he was a cool dude. I ran with him, and we used to, you know, go from Livernois and Livernois and over by Junction. Then we'd go from there, we'd go to Delray. And people familiar with Detroit knows where Delray is, but somebody that's not familiar with Detroit would just have to Google it and you can see where it's at. But at that time, me and him hung around a lot together. And he shared a lot of stories with me and stuff like that. And, I told him from the stories that he told me, I told him to be careful and watch how he moves and what he's doing and where he goes and all that, But he was a dude. I ran with some guys also that, they wasn't nobody scared, you know what I mean? So, but sometimes you ain't got to be scared, but you just got to pay attention what you're doing and how you move and stuff like that. But anyways, he had told me these stories, and I told him to watch himself, watch his back. And then later on, they ended up finding him dead. And I thought that was jacked up, And then later on, I find out another one of my friends gets killed. And he gets shot down and gets killed. And I just hear about this. And, another friend of mine told me about it. And it was crazy. His name was Bert. And a friend of mine told me that he got gunned down and he was killed. And I thought that was crazy, And then the same dude that told me that he got gunned down, he ends up falling victim to death. And the reason I say that is because I heard the story, but truthfully, I don't believe the story myself. But anyways, I heard that he's supposedly hung himself in his own shed in his backyard, in his own backyard. And I think that's bullshit. I think there's more to that story. But, just crazy incidents, And then I had another friend, Mark. He ends up falling victim to death. And, and then he dies, in a garage due to exhaust fumes. And I thought that was another crazy incident. It's just crazy that you had some friends that pass away with some crazy ass situations. And then, some things you can say, I don't know. It's just some of that shit. I just think there's more to the story, really, to be honest with you. But that being said, I'm gonna end this segment right here. I hope y'all enjoy listening to the story, and it helps me talk about it, things like that. If you want to support the channel, my cash out is money sign FC313. The PayPal is DDT313. So if you want to support the channel, go right ahead. And also, if you want to support the channel, subscribe, hit the like, and the notification bell. And every time you listen to one of my videos, hit the like every time. But you only have to subscribe once and hit the notification bell once. That being said, I'm going to leave that there. And y'all stay with me, and there's more stories to come. Some stories I just got to get things together before I tell the story. But anyways, that being said, I hope y'all have a good evening. And I hope y'all enjoy listening to the stories. And be safe. Watch how you move. Watch who you trust. And every day, pay attention what you're doing. And this is Detroit's Darkest Times. And we'll do another one later on. Appreciate you. We out.